Hey everyone, it's Fox from modelmakingguru.com here, and welcome to a very short, hopefully, but interesting little build. HG, Geara Zulu. Geara Zulu? Geara. I like Geara. Geara works for me. Dead simple, it's my first actual HG kit. How cool is that? Been making these things for several years. However, this isn't going to be my usual build and paint job. If you know me, you know I've been doing this for like, what, 35 years now? It's a long time. And I've been doing Gunpla for maybe, don't know, 3 years now, 4 years. I kind of stopped doing everything else when I started doing Gunpla. Yeah, sorry about that. I will get back to real kits. Anyway, I suddenly realised you've seen me do building and painting and weathering. I've built things like this. And this. And let's not forget this. But what you never see me do is what 95% of Gunpla builders do, which is kind of absolute beginner builds, which is basically the way most people build these things. How are we going to do it? We've got the kit, nice and simple. We are going to be using actual Gundam markers. 95% of people that make Gunpla put them together and just use some Gundam markers for panel lining. Maybe do a little bit of dry brushing, stick the stickers on, and that's it. So we're going to follow that. So I have a small selection of Gundam markers. These are basically marker pens, paint pens, designed for doing things like, these are panel line pens, so they're quite fine. These are big fat pens with painting, and they come in standard Gundam colours. Black, red, white, yellow, green, pink. Don't have a blue one for some reason. And I even got one for scopes, but I don't think I'll use that one. We are going to use a pair of nippers, standard equipment for any model project. Modelling knife, again standard. I'm going to use some sanding sticks, but you can use sandpaper or any sanding sticks or any sanding products. Just make sure you've got anything from medium to fine for polishing, because we're not going to be painting this. And last of all, we are going to use, unfortunately I don't have a silver Gundam marker, so we are going to use one paint. Now, for the sake of this build, absolute beginners, it doesn't matter what paint you use. Just make sure it's an acrylic, but as long as it's silver, that's all that matters. Doesn't matter what kind of silver. This just happens to be ammo steel, and I have a brush. And this is just going to be for some little details on the frame. Well, it's an HG kit. It depends how much frame there is. I might use it. And I might use it for some of the details on the armour. And that's kind of it. I might use one of the brush if I decide to do a little bit of dry brushing, and that might be as far as I go in terms of modelling. So this is going to be a real skill level 0 build. No previous experience at all. Now, I know I said that in the skill level 1, but this is even less. This is your first ever kit. It just happens to be a Gunpla. So, there you go. So, let's put all this to one side. Let's get the box open. Okay, here we go. Right, first off in the box is the instructions. You can see what this thing's going to look like at the end. The reason I like this kit, I mean, I've kind of grown to like the Zaku's, but it looks like a German. It's great. It looks more like a bloke in some kind of futuristic space Nazi outfit than a massive mobile suit. So I kind of like it. It's the helmet that does it dead obvious. So I really like it. So, got the instructions. It's an HG kit, so the instructions are super simple. There's quite a lot of parts, but you know, modern HGs are a lot more detailed than old ones. But it's, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 runners. Not a lot. What else do we have? So we have stickers. Now, I'm actually going to use these. These are foil stickers. I know, you know my thoughts on stickers. I'm actually going to use these because this is a real skill level 0. I can't do any kind of any enamel, what's it called? Reverse washing. Can't remember the phrase then. No enamel reverse washes, so we're going to use the stickers for the black and white bits. It'll probably look terrible, they usually do, but that's what we're going to go with. And then of course all the parts on the runners. If you've never built a model before, and this is the first ever model, all your parts come on these runners. And the beauty of Bandai is they're all beautifully detailed, but they come in, some of them come in multicolour sprues. So you have dark grey parts here, we have very dark green grey parts here, brown parts for the tubes, and then these beautiful, actually really beautiful beam effect parts for the Heat Hawk and for, I'm not sure what that's for, maybe for the end of the rifle. And we have them in green and so on. Now the difference between, again, if this is your first ever Gunpla, so you're not really sure what Gunpla are, just so you know, Gunpla kits are all snap fit. They're always snap fit apart from some very rare old ones. And they come pre-coloured, so you don't have to paint them. It's completely optional. There is a phrase, Gunpla builders will know, that Gunpla is freedom. You can do whatever you want. So we have all the parts on the sprues, and the first step is going to be taking all these off and getting rid of all the little nubs that the sprue leaves behind. That's the sprue, or some people call it the tree. These are the gates that hold the piece on, and when you take it off you're left with little tiny things called nubs, and that's what you have to clean off. So, not a massive amount of parts, shouldn't be too long to build. If you were just building this, you'll probably have it done in a weekend, or even in a day. So, we will crack on with these. Right, let's start getting these parts off the sprues. So how do we do that? Well, let me go and get these bits ready, and we'll walk you through. Okay, right, so the first thing I like to do is open my window so it's not so hot in my room, and it's just starting to rain outside and the smell is fantastic. It's that dry earth just hit by rain. Oh, I love it. Petrichor. Good word for you to look up. So, first thing we do, get the instructions. I like to mark off all the sprues I'll need for each step. Now, if you've never built a Gunpla before, let me quickly go over the instructions. They're all in Japanese. Just give up, go home. It's too complicated. Just kidding, it's not really. You don't need to be able to read Japanese. You'll be glad to know some of the recent Star Wars kits actually come in English as well, but for the most part, this is a Japanese thing. Lots of Japanese, ignore it. There's some symbols you'll need to know. If you've never built a model before, basics you need to know. Each step is numbered. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dead easy. Sometimes you'll see numbers referred to in white boxes. This refers to a previous step. So for example, this is saying here, you're taking what you built in step 1 and inserting it. And same there, step 1, insert it. And in step 1 you'll see you make this small joint for the shoulder. Now on some kits you have a left and a right. On this it's the same, so it says do it twice times 2. This just means do this step twice. Dead simple, you don't need to know that bit. A13, PC8, E10, PC5. These are the part callouts. The letters refer to the sprue. The number in the black circle refers to the part. So for example, PC5 would be the polycarbonate strip, the polycap strip. You can see here, if it was showing the light, PC. And part 5 is that one. It's labelled there, part 5. And it's the same for every sprue. The plastic sprues will have the number cut out the top, or the letter cut out the top. This symbol just refers to sticker. It's saying put a sticker on this piece. And the number, sometimes they're numbered in Latin numbers that you recognise, sometimes they're in Japanese numbers. This is Japanese number or symbol, and it means it's a sticker, and it's the one that looks like the floaty bird. I don't know what the number is. Here you'll see the floaty bird symbol, and here's the sticker. So it's just a way of calling it out. Yes, I've forgotten where my camera is, so everything's off camera. And that's about as complicated as the instructions get. You'll see lots of things with bunny ears, like here, and here, and here. All this symbol means is pay attention to this direction. Have the piece oriented. So here it says, you see the bunny ears on part D, on A3, which goes into D2, and it's saying make sure it's that way round when it goes in. The golden rule with Bandai, like Lego, if something's not going together correctly, you've done it wrong. There's never a bad fit. Very, very rarely a bad fit. If it doesn't fit together right, you've done something wrong. And that's about as complicated as the instructions get. There are other symbols. You can find online a list of the translations for symbols, but they're not particularly complicated. You may also come across this one, which is a little bit confusing sometimes. A white circle with a black circle, or sometimes it'll be the other way around. If it's that one, it means do this step first. It's saying here, sticker, and it's that number sticker, do this step first. So you put your sticker on that piece, then you insert your piece into there, because once it's in there, it's not coming out. So put your sticker on first, because you see the sticker goes around the sides, then slide it into place, and that's all sealed up. That's about as complicated as it gets. So yeah, mark out which sprues you need. I know for the first steps, the torso and the head. There's the head, but I need A, E, B, G and C. So let me go and get those sprues, and we'll start. Right, so what I'm going to be doing is taking all the parts off ready for this part of the build, for the torso and the head. So let's get cracking on. So the first parts we need are E10. Now I'm going to collect all the parts together. So we want parts E10, which are that one and that one. Now what you'll need here is your nippers. So the trick is not to go right against the part and nip it off, because you'll stress the plastic. On dark plastic you'll end up with white marks everywhere. You want to go in a bit from the plastic and leave a little bit of a nub on there. Now you want to use this flat edge, not that way. You want a flat cut. So leave a little bit of sprue behind and just nip. Now this is a peg that goes into a hole, so it doesn't actually matter. You're not going to see that. So that can be nipped right to the end. But if you're not sure, again, there's a peg where you're not going to see, so I can go right to the end on that one. But if you're not sure, leave a little bit of a nub. So we'll take those two off. That's going to leave a little bit of a nub there. But that's a peg, so I can cut right to the end. And so is that one. I'm going to put these pieces in a little plastic dish just to keep them together. So let's go and get the rest of these done. And again, remember to leave little nubs, but if you're not sure. But if you're pretty certain it's a peg that goes into a hole you're not going to see, just go right up to the end. So I also need PC8. Where is PC? 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. I need 2 of those because I'm building 2 shoulder units. Polycaps you'll never see ends, so you can go right to the end every time. Yeah, if I can get the nippers in. Now ideally you want to use good quality nippers. You don't have to spend, these are Tamiya side cutters, basically nippers. Don't just go to the hardware store and buy a pair of nippy type things, because they'll probably be too harsh and damage your plastic. Next we need, the next step, we need A13 and PC5. Well, PC we just had. So let's get PC5. We know that one because I pointed it out earlier on. A13, let's find the A runner. And here's a handy tip for you. In most Gunpla kits, the A runner is the one with multiple colours on it. So if you're not sure, usually that's the A runner. And I want the A13, which is that one, 13. So this is an exterior armour part. So again, leave a small amount of the nub sticking out. If you're not sure, always leave a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to stop and show you the next step now, before I do all the rest of the parts. Now, let me bring the camera in, and we'll have a proper look at that piece and the nubs, because this is going to be how to clean off the nubs. Okay, right, so we have our piece, and we have the nubs, so we need to deal with these. First thing we're going to do is use our craft knife or modelling knife. Now, if you're a very young builder, it goes without saying, you have to be super careful whenever using your craft knife. Or if you're working with your parent, then maybe get your parent to do this, depending on how old you are. But if you're going to use a knife yourself, be super careful. So you can see here we have a nub sticking out. Very unsightly. Now the reality is you probably won't see this bit, but it's underneath, but we'll clean this bit. So what do? First of all, take your knife. What you want to do is have the knife flat against the surface. And what you're not going to do is go right to the bottom of the nub and dig it out, because that will just put a gouge in. What you want to do is put it flat against the surface, but just start gently and just shave the part away as best you can. Now I find sometimes, depending on how you grip, if you kind of grip it with some pressure, it becomes a little bit easier. So what you want to do is make sure everything's in focus for a start. There you go. Get your blade, and sometimes it's also easier to do it with the heel of the blade. Make it flat to the surface and just shave that away. You're taking off the majority of it. You're not going to get all of it, and it's not going to be perfect, but there's more to come. Okay, try a different angle. Try from there. What you're seeing here, the white mark, is where the plastic has been stressed by the nippers. That's why you don't go straight into the piece with the nippers, because you want to, if you're going to put stress marks on the plastic, you'd rather do that halfway up a nub than on the actual piece itself. So there we go, that's reasonably flat, you can feel it with your finger. Okay, so we've got that down quite nicely. Still there, you can still see it. So this is where the sanding sticks come in, or sandpaper, whichever you prefer. I'm actually going to add one to the roster. I have our polishing stick. Now apologies for the lighting here, it's all a bit, let me turn this light off, it might be a bit better. Let's see if that's better for you. Can we see that still? There we go. Let's put it in focus. There we go, sorry about that. So we have a polishing stick. These are all from Ultimate Modelling products, but any sandpaper or polishing sticks will do. We have the medium grit, which is spongy and a little bit rougher. And I've added a rougher coarse grade stick. This is, I don't know what grit these are. This is probably about, I don't know, 800 to 1200 grit, something like that. If you're using sanding paper, get a good selection of papers from anywhere from, say, 600 grit up to 6000 grit. The smaller the number, the rougher the sandpaper. So, what we're going to do is start off with the rough one. Where's that piece gone? There it is. So, what we're going to do first is we're going to just sand this with the rougher paper, so we sand this area flat, and hopefully that will remove the nub, anything that's sticking up. So, go in with your sanding paper, or your sanding stick, and just gently sand. I'm not putting much pressure on this at all. My aim here is just to sand this area flat so that whatever does stick up from the nub no longer sticks up. I'm bringing the nub down to meet the surface. And there we have it. So that's now flatter. Now I did just film this on one of the sides and it looked brilliant to me when I was doing it, but when I watched it back on film you could still see a bit of a nub, so I'm refilming this. So now you can see that's nice and flat, but it also looks like I've sanded the living crap out of it. So we need to bring that shine back. So you've gone in with the rough, now we go in with the medium grit, which is softer but still a little bit rough. And what this will do is take any of these sanding marks out and replace them with finer, smaller sanding marks, so it'll make it less rough. So again, almost no pressure. It's a bit more difficult on edges like this, but almost no pressure. Just go in and sand that for a moment. If this is a big flat area, you might want to use circular motions, just because that smooths everything out a bit more and removes any obvious scrapes and scratches. Okay, so we can see now that's a lot smoother. Hopefully you can see in the light. Now to my old man eyes, I'm trying to see if there's a nub there. I guarantee on camera you'll probably see a hint of a colour difference there where the nub was, because it looks brilliant to me now, but which means it'll look terrible on camera. But regardless of that, it's much better than it was. So yeah, there's a slight colour difference, I can see it here, but that's fine. I mean, in reality you're not going to see this bit because it's underneath, but it's the principle of the thing, dear boy. Now we go to our final round, which is the polishing and buffing stick. You have two sides on this one, but again this will be two different types of sandpaper. You have this side, which is the buffing, which is very smooth but not perfectly smooth, and then this side, which is the polishing, and this is just like shiny paper. There's just almost no grit there at all. So always go from rough to smooth, so start with the slightly rougher side first. Go in, again, just work it slowly. Again, this is taking out the sanding marks that we've just added and replacing them with finer marks, blending everything together. Now in some places you might find sandpaper easier, and I'll show you why on the side in a minute. But you're just going in and you can see now it's getting its shine back. Still not perfect, but it's getting its shine back. The idea here is to try and get this back to looking like plastic. So don't be afraid to go in with the rougher grits first to smooth everything out, because you'll bring it back in the polishing. And then we go in last of all with our super shiny paper, our polishing, and you can hear that squeaky noise. That's usually a good sign that you've done what you need to do, but we'll do more than we need to. And you can put more pressure on when you're using these two, when you're using your final two stages. I can go back with the rougher one again. You're really just blending it all away and bringing the shine back. Surfaces are shiny because they're smooth, so you're going from a rough surface which isn't shiny because the light is scattered by the rough surface, and you're smoothing everything out so that it's a smooth surface and the light reflects off and looks shiny, makes the surface look shiny. And there we have our now shiny edge, with that nub pretty much vanished. I can still see a microscopic hint, but let's be honest, you're never going to see that. When somebody looks at your finished Gunpla, they're not going to see the tiniest of nub marks. And that's what we're aiming for. That's what we need to do over all the pieces on this kit. Because we're not painting it, we can't afford to leave nub marks. If we were painting this, completely painting it, as you'll see in some of my other videos, which is what I normally do, I just worry about getting the surface flat. I don't worry about how it looks, because I know I'm going to paint over it. Now, you might have some areas. I filmed doing this bit, and I thought it looked brilliant. When I came back, it wasn't, because there's still an ever so slight nub mark there that I need to sand a bit more, and there's this rough patch here, which didn't look so bad when I was looking at the camera screen. When I looked at it on the telly, this bit was massive. The problem with this is it's slightly recessed, and the sanding sponge just can't get in there as much. So places like that, you might find sandpaper is better, because you can really work it into recessed areas. I need to do some more sanding on this bit just to get it smooth and get rid of that hint of a nub mark, because that's not finished yet. But that's what we're aiming for, is to get the plastic back to the way it looks. So what I need to do is now go away and get all the other parts off, get all the nubs removed, get everything sanded. I may just go ahead and get all the parts off for the whole kit, but it depends if I've got any storage trays. So we'll see how that goes. Because I just want to teach you things in this. It's not so much watching me do it as teaching you how to do it. And we are back. Right, all the denubbing, despruing and sanding has been done. Took me about 4 or 5 hours. It's the tedious bit of building Gunpla, but stick with it. If you've got people around to talk to, or you've got, say, podcasts to listen to, or music in the background, it makes life a lot easier. I listen to podcasts when I'm doing this. So, all been done. I've got everything sorted out. If you can get yourself one of these little sorting trays, they're really handy. You can get these from most stationery stores, art and craft stores, places like that, or cheap pound shops. This is just a little simple one. I've just arranged everything into sections in the instructions. So we have the right arm, the left arm, the waist, the feet, backpack, left leg, right leg, torso and head, weapons, and the shield. And it just means I can work on a discrete section at a time, and I know which piece goes where. Some people sort them by colour, all the parts. Some people sort them by sprue. But I find it easier, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go section by section. So we're going to start off with the torso and the head. So this is how I do it, and this is just the way I found it the easiest to organise all the parts. Now, one thing I didn't do is actually go and cut all the polycaps off the sprues. I'll do that as I go along, just because I suddenly realised some sections have more than one polycap, and you suddenly got to make sure you're using the right polycap. Some of the polycaps look very similar, so you don't want to get them mixed up. So that's all the parts for the torso and the head. So, right, we'll start on this bit, and this will allow me to show you some stickers. I did start now. If you know me, and if you've watched my other videos, you know I don't do stickers. I try and avoid them as much as possible. However, in this kit, this is an absolute beginner's level, so we're going to do stickers. Now, I did do some experiments. I've started just doing some stickers on the leg here, on one of the leg parts. Sorry for the jump cut there, I got distracted for a second. You can see here I've started to put the little stickers on for the white piping. I did try some experiments on a spare piece, because you get like spare leg parts for this kit. I did try some experiments using the Gundam marker, white, for painting this part instead, the little bits of piping and trim. But they're so splurty and careless and big and fat that it just came out like a complete mess. So we're going to be using the stickers, but there's quite a few stickers on this kit. But like I said at the start, this is a beginner build, so we're going to be exclusively using the stickers, plus a little tiny bit of painting here and there, but just for the details. So let me go and get all these bits ready and move the camera, and we'll start putting this together and sticking some stickers on, see what comes out the other side. Oh, there'll be a bit of panel lining as well, because we've got some tubes to play with, so we need to get them sorted. So back in a second. Okay, right, so here we have the first piece we need to stick a sticker on before we assemble the torso. Now this is part of the chest plate, and you can see here it's got some raised details of the little Xeon symbols. Now then, the final design, this is supposed to be a black piece with all this piping marked out in white, and you get a sticker to reflect that. If this was a kit I was painting, what I would actually do is paint the whole thing white, put a gloss varnish over to protect the white, then paint over it with black enamel, and then I would use a little bit of thinner and a very fine cotton bud or a brush to brush the black enamel off to expose the white parts. That's called a reverse wash, but we're not going to be doing that. That's a well advanced technique, that is. We're going to use the sticker. So, how do we use stickers? Well, there's different types of stickers. You get the clear stickers for things like markings. You get dry rub transfers in these kits, but we don't have any of those in this one. And we get these foil stickers, and that's just going to really over reflect. So what do we want to do? Well, the instructions say the sticker I need is the one that looks like, I don't know how to describe that. It is this one. This is the symbol it wants, I think. Just check. Yep, that symbol there matches the one on the instructions. So, to remove a sticker, don't just pluck at it with your thumb. Take your craft knife. Very carefully, just bend it so you get an edge coming out. There you go. Get your craft knife underneath and just gently get it under there. Stick it to the craft knife with your thumb and pull it away. And there we have our sticker, which is reflecting all over the place. Now this is really hard for me to do, to have it on shot as well. So this couldn't be more simpler. The trick is getting it lined up. So what you need to do is take a convenient edge like this corner here. Get that in place and just gently place it. I'm not sticking it down fully yet. I just want to get it down enough so I can get the blade off. Now the trick is to line this up. So you don't want to push it down because it's not quite far down enough. So let's try moving it with my blade a little bit. It's not quite lined up. You want to be careful doing this because you don't want to rip the sticker. In fact, let's just take that off and start again. Now you can use your hands if you find it easier. Just line it up. And apologies for my old man shaky hands. Okay, that should be in the right place. Make sure your edges are lined up. If you don't put it down too firmly, there is some room for manoeuvre and room for it to come off. Don't. This isn't as easy as it looks, but a little bit of patience and you'll be fine. So I can push that along a little bit. I think we might be there. Or maybe not. Not quite right. Just take a little bit of to and fro. It can be a little frustrating at times. Like I say, especially with me when I'm doing it from, I've got to have my head quite a ways away so you can see, but that doesn't help me actually seeing it. I think we might be on a winner there. That's good enough for me. So now I've got it in the right place, I can gently push it down with my thumb just to give it some adhesion. Now you remember that was like a rough surface. So what I want to do now is take an cotton bud, very gently, but with a little bit of force, but not too much, just start rubbing on that very carefully, just to push it round edges and push it into the raised detail. Now you've got to be careful, you don't want to rip, you don't want to push through and rip anything. So I'm just pressing a little bit, just gently. I'm quite pleased with how this came out actually. So the difficulty for me is I'm an old guy, I'm 45 now. So this is the kind of thing when I do this, I would want to be really close to it with my magnifying headset. There is a name for them and I can't remember what the name is. But I'm happy to do it from a distance so you guys can see, so it's a bit challenging. So you may have an easier time putting these on. Okay, so we're just working around, especially around the edges here as well, because you want to make sure the edges are stuck down. Now it is possible that over time these stickers may lose their stick and come off, but we're going to be putting a matte varnish over this when we've finished everything else. I haven't shown that. I may pop up with the odd bit here and there during the process, by the way, that I didn't show at the start, the odd bit of equipment or product. So stay tuned for all these episodes because I may introduce new things. I've already realised we may have to do a little bit of a pin wash on this, but I'll keep it really simple for you. Again, because I'm doing this for beginners, I want to keep it nice and simple. So there we have now our sticker stuck on that piece, and if you're lucky, I think I've got away with it, I've managed to get it lined up so that the sticker actually shows the shape underneath which matches these white parts, and that's why I've been rubbing it down, just to get it to form to those edges, and I'm actually really pleased with that. Let's come a little closer so you can see. So you can see now the sticker's on there. By the way, if you're wondering why I've got a yellow thumbnail, I know it's kind of gross. I have washed my hands and scrubbed my nails. I always do when I film. But I had a curry last night and there was naan bread and there was putting lots of curry into naan bread, and yeah, it's curry. So, Anyway, so you can see there the sticker's sort of moulded to the shape of the white pinstripes, and that's what we're looking for. So that is how you do stickers. Just make sure to go slowly. Don't stick it straight down straight away. Some people, if they're using little marking stickers that maybe are just little symbols and things lying around, they don't have to be lined up specifically on an edge, they sometimes find a drop of water underneath the sticker first, gives them a chance to move it around a bit. So if you're having trouble, try that, and then just make sure you leave it long enough to stick properly. Now, like I say, that would eventually come off over time, but we're going to be putting a matte varnish over this, and that hopefully should lock them all in place. So I've got a couple of others to do. I'll get those done. And when we come back, I've got a little bit of panel lining to do on some of the tubes that go around the torso before we put it all together. I'm going to be doing these bits before I assemble, because trust me, putting a sticker on a single piece is a lot easier than trying to put a sticker on the entire torso when you've got arms and legs flailing about. So we'll probably apply stickers before we assemble things. So let me go and get those other bits done, and we'll do some panel lining on the tubes. Right, so next bit, these are the tubes that go around the middle of the waist. And you can see here, I tell you what, we have wood pigeons in our garden and we used to get food to feed them. These look like mealworms. I can't help thinking mealworm when I see these. Yeah, so they've got the little ribs all along. We need to emphasise those. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to use our Gundam marker. Now I've got two. I've got a grey one and a black one. I've got another colour brown one as well. If you don't want anything too drastic, you could go for the grey one. If you want to make an obvious panel line, you can go for the black one. We're going to go for the black one. Now, you might be thinking, how am I going to do this? Well, the panel line marker itself is very fine, as you can see, but it may still be a bit too fat for these grooves, but don't worry, because there's one other piece of kit you'll need, and that is a pencil eraser. This is a normal pencil eraser. Squishy. So, get yourself a pencil eraser, just for any mistakes, and what you're going to do is dead simple. Take your panel lining pen and run it into that panel line. Oops. This is what modelers would use a pin wash for, but we're not doing that. So there you go. Now it's a bit rough and ready around the edges. Give it a blow. Get your pencil eraser and quite simply rub. Try and rub over the top rather than rubbing into the groove, because you want to keep the marker in the groove. You might find sometimes a little bit of the rubber comes off. That's fine, it'll dry out eventually. And you might get some of the marker out of the groove. Okay, that's cool. But you can always go back and do it again. So let's do some more. Oh look, I went outside the line. We'll have to clean that up. Don't need to be precise, that's what the rubber is going to do for us. Let's do another one. Oh, do it on camera, dear boy. Now you can get, oh god, I'm everywhere here. Oh dear, my shaky hand is not helping me, but all is not lost. These are quite fine little grooves, and it's a very small part, and I'm a long way away again. So let's just put the lid back on the pen. Always put your lid back on the pen, A, so you don't damage the top, tip, and B, so it doesn't dry out. Give that a quick blow, just to dry it a little. Now you don't want to leave it too long, because the longer you leave it, the harder it'll be able to get this stuff off. Okay, so let's go back in with the rubber, and again I'm going to try and keep it that way to the surface, just so I don't go into the groove so much. And again, if you were doing this with oil paints or enamel paints, if you're a model maker, if I was doing this, I'd be doing the same thing with oil paints. I'd cover the piece in oil paint or enamel paint, and then I'd rub off the excess to just leave the paint in the groove. And that's what we're doing effectively. We're just using a pen instead of a paintbrush and paint. Now, it can be quite tricky to get into some of these edges. I should have cut this rubber first, really, to give it a point. And there we have some panel lining. Now you can use different colours. I could have used the darker brown one to be more subtle, or the grey one, but I used the black on this just because I wanted to show it on camera. But that's the same principle we're going to use across the whole model for all the panel lining. Now it doesn't look perfect. It also doesn't actually look like it's in focus. It doesn't look perfect, but you can always go back over again. And the beauty of using a rubber, you can do the same thing with using a brush and thinners to clean up any messes. But the beauty of using a rubber is it doesn't just create a nice solid line, it kind of blurs it and smudges it around a bit. So you can see here compared to here, these little segments here look a little bit darker than these segments. It might come out on camera, apologies if it doesn't. You're smearing the ink across the surface and moving it around and rubbing it off. It actually tints it ever so slightly, so you get a little bit of dirt look, a little bit of worn and used look on the surface as well, which is kind of cool. If you were doing, say, panel lines on the leg or arm, it might just soften the edges a bit. It'll leave ink in the recess, but it may leave a tiny bit on the outside, and it just softens the edge and makes it look a bit more natural, because this is supposed to represent dirt between the panel lines. So I'm quite pleased with that. So I'm going to go off and do the rest of these panel lines and finish all those stickers for the torso, and then we'll get the torso built. Back in a moment. Okay, right, before we start the assembly, there's also some panel lines we need to do on the armour. Here's a couple of examples. This is the helmet. Just a German helmet. I mean, this is why I like this dude. Now for the armour, I'm going to use the grey panel line marker, just because it's a bit more subtle. Black can be a bit harsh. If this was, say, white parts, you wouldn't want to use a black marker because it would just look like you've drawn a black line on. What you want to use is something subtle. So we're going to take our part, same as before. We're going to take our pen and we're going to put a line around the edge of this visor piece here. So dead simple. Push the end of the pen against the edge and just draw. Again, don't worry about not being perfect, or if you go off at an angle, or if you goof, that's fine. Put a little bit in this little dimple here. We've got these little dimples on the side, so I'm just going to put the pen in and wiggle it around. Oops, oh look, I went outside. We can fix that. Also got a little bit on this side. Again, I'm not fussed if it goes outside the line, because we're going to go with the pencil eraser. Now this is a little recess bit, so let's put the lid back on the pen, give it a blow. You don't have to blow on it, it's just, I find it helps reduce the amount of stuff I actually take off. Take our eraser. Now for these pieces on the side, I'm just going to go over the top, like that, which should remove any excess from outside. It may take a little of the ink out from inside as well, but that's fine because that will just fade it nicely. So you can see there, that's in the little holes now. Oops, ping. go. And now for the helmet visor here. I'm going to go, what way am I going to go? I'm going to go inwards that way. Just to soften the edges a little bit, and also just fade it ever so slightly. And also take any excess from around that little dimple in the middle. And I'm doing it this way, so I kind of keep it in the recess. A little bit there I can see. Just a little bit sticking out, that's fine. I can run it that way. And if you go wrong and take too much off, don't worry, just go back over with the pen and start again. And there we have, totally not on camera, sorry about that, our helmet with the line there and the dimples. Oh, got in the back bit. This one's going to run it over the top, just to get the ink out from inside. So you've got the little line there. Now you could, if you wanted to, put a line across here, across this bit here, excuse me, but I'm not going to, because that would look a bit weird. I'm going to really stick to panel lines and obvious places where two panels would meet. That's just a bend in the shape. So that's going to do quite nicely for the helmet there. Now once this is all matte varnished over, it looks a little shiny now. It's just like using a marker pen. It looks really shiny. But once it's all matte varnished over, that will all flat down and it will become a little bit more subtle. So that's how we're going to do all the armour as well. So what I'll do is I'll go off and do the rest of it. For the green parts I'm going to use the grey. Grey is still a little bit too dark for me, for my personal tastes, but it will do. I've done the tubes, you can see there. They're all done. The dark armour, these parts, I'll use the black. You probably won't really see it, obviously, but it'll be there and you'll know it's there. And what I'll do is I'll go around all these little bits like these clasps here and the edges, and you'll see when I've finished. And so I'll use the black for that. And there are no other real colour parts. I need to use a different colour. There is also the brown one, like I say. The brown pen is handy if you've got red parts. Now we don't actually have any red parts on this kit, so I'm not going to be using that, or probably not going to be using that. But you could use it for these if you wanted something more subtle, or maybe even use it for the green if you wanted something really subtle. So let me go off and get all them done. We'll cobble the torso together, and I think that'll call this episode wrapped up. In the next one we'll do the legs and armour, and we'll show panel lining again and things like that, and a little bit of painting. So let me go and get those done, and we'll see what comes out the other side again.